Fellow citizens, today we stand as a free and sovereign people. By valor of our soldiers and enduring spirit of our nation, we have secured independence of the Confederate States of America. Our cause was just, the defense of our homes, our rights, and the principles of self-governance. We sought only liberty of our fathers bequeathed us, as the right of each state to govern its own affairs without interference. Against overwhelming force, we have prevailed, proving the strength of our resolve and our righteousness of our people. Now, as we turn from war to peace, let us commit ourselves to the task of building a nation founded upon principles we have so dearly defended. May our fields prosper, may our commerce grow, and our people know the blessings of freedom secured. To those who fought against us, as we offer not malice but peace, may the bonds of brotherhood once severed be restored with time and goodwill, and with humble hearts we give thanks to Almighty God, who has guided us to this day of triumph. May He bless our Confederacy and keep it ever steadfast in its devotion to liberty.
On September 17, 1862, the Battle of Antietam would begin near Sharpsburg, Maryland, which proved to be the bloodiest single day in both the American Civil War and United States military history. Think about that. Bloodiest single day, even bloodier than World War II battles. Lee's army retreated to Virginia before McClellan could destroy it, what leaned about Anthem be seen as a Union victory, of course, since it halted Lee's invasion of the North, providing an opportunity for Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, which he issued as... Sorry, my fingernail scraped across the microphone for a moment. Which he issued through an executive order on January 1st, 1863. Well, with this victory by the Union, Robert E. Lee left down to Virginia. He left his army, went down to Virginia, as I stated. But in this timeline of the Confederacy, in this timeline of the Civil War, the Confederacy would win this battle. How does this happen? How does the Confederacy win? So, Union Order 191, aka the plans that Lee dropped, which was very bad. I don't know how. Lee didn't drop it, sorry. It was more of a Confederate soldier. Confederate soldier dropped the plans, and that was devastating as it was. You gotta realize, these plans were to encircle Washington, D.C., then invade Philadelphia, to pressure the Union into surrender. These plans would have worked. These plans really would have. If it really did, kind of, but who knows if it would really work. We don't know if it could have worked, but in this time we're going to say it worked, say it did. But before I get on to this, I'm going to give some historical context. So here that comes up, and that's going to be big, and that's going to be some big news. So here's some historical context leading up to the Civil War. Y'all will appreciate it. But here we go. The timeline of events leading to the American Civil War was something. We have to even go all the way back to the colonial period, because in 1619 Dutch ships arrived in the Virginia colony carrying 20 black Africans as indentured servants. From this beginning, African slavery is introduced to the future of the Hold up, let me get my bearing real quick. African slavery is introduced to the future United States. 1640, General Court of Virginia orders John Perch, a runaway black servant, to serve his master or his assigns for the time of his natural life or elsewhere. Thus, John Patch, a black man, was sentenced to a lifetime of slavery. Let's skip ahead to 1774. 1774, Quakers led by John Ponder. I'm sure I said that right. And others, including Benjamin Rush and Benjamin Franklin, of all people, organizing the first abolitionist society in the colonies. The Pennsylvania Society for the of slavery. Sorry, I hesitated on that. I was thinking. In Philadelphia. 1776. The United States Declaration of Independence declares that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain and unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Slavery remains legal in the new nation. A clause condemning slavery is included in a clause commending slavery is included in the Declaration, but was removed at the insistence of South Carolina and Georgia. Let's skip ahead to the early constitutional period. 1787, in the Constitutional Convention drafts a new United States Constitution. The main compromises between supporters and opponents of slavery includes the 33-5 Compromise, which increases the high legislative representative in the House of Representatives and Electoral College by counting each slave as 3/5 of a person. How do you count a person 3/5 of a person? It doesn't make sense. So now, let's go to the Compromise of 1850 to the election of 1860. Compromise of 1850. The U.S. slave population, according to the 1850 United States Census, is 3,204,313. That is the population of enslaved Americans, or enslaved Black Americans. Well, what was this compromise? This compromise was to handle California's petition. Wait, hold up. Okay. Hold on, let me get this. Give me a second. Okay, hold on, I'm looking into it right now. Okay, let me read this. Okay, the compromise as of 1815 to the election of 1860. March 11th, U.S. Senator William H. Stewart of New York delivers his higher law address. He states that compromise on slavery is wrong because a higher law than the Constitution, the law of God, all men are free and equal. Well, okay. April 17th, U.S. Senator Henry S. Foote, of Mississippi pulls a pistol out on anti-slavery. Senator Benton on the floor of the Senate. Then President Taylor dies on July 9th, and succeeded by Vice President Harold Fillmore. Although he's a New Yorker, Fillmore is more inclined to compromise with or even support Southern interests. Henry Clay proposes the Compromise of 1850 to handle California's petition for the admission to the Union as a free state, and Texas's demand for land in New Mexico. Clay proposes 1. Admiration of California, 2. Prohibition of Texas expansion to New Mexico, 3. Compensation of $10 million to Texas in finance its public debts, 4. Permission to citizens of New Mexico and Utah to vote whether slavery should be allowed in their territories, popular sovereignty, in other words. 5. A ban on slave trade in the District of Columbia. Thus, slavery would still be allowed in the district. And 6. A stronger fugitive slave law with more vigorous enforcement. Under the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, a slave owner could reclaim a runaway slave by establishing ownership before a commissioner rather than in a jury trial. Clay's initial omnibus bill that included all previous provisions. Hold up, I'm gonna rerun by that again. Clay's initial ambitious bill that included all these provisions failed. Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois that established different coalitions that passed each provision separately. The responses to the Compromise of 1850 varied. Southerners ceased movement towards the disunion, but are angered by Northern resistance to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act. Anti-slavery forces are upset at the possible expansion of slavery in the Southwestern, considering the stronger fugitive slave law that could require all U.S. citizens to assist in returning fugitive slaves. The Nashville Convention of 9 Southern states discussed states' rights and slavery in June. In November, where the convention talks about seceding, but adjures due to the passions of the laws that constitutes the Compromise of 1850. The Utah Territory is organized and adopts the slave code. Only 29 enslaved black Americans are found in the territory. Or in 1860, although several hundred Native Americans were enslaved in the territory as well. October, the Boston on Vigilance Committee frees 2 fugitive slaves, Ellen and William Craft, from jails and prevents them from being returned to Georgia. Now, let's get to 1860, or the election of 1860. Alright, let me scroll down right here. In the election of 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected. It was a very tense moment at the time. If I take a look right here, okay, the U.S. slave population according to 1860 United States Census was 3,954,174. That is a lot. The census also concludes that the total U.S. population increased from 23,191,875 to 31,443,321 since the 1850 census. An increase of 35.4%. 35.4% of an increase. And 3 million, or aka, let's round it up. So 4 million of those men are enslaved. 4 million of them are enslaved. Think about that. That is crazy. 26% of all Northerners, but only 10% of Southerners lived in towns or cities. But that 80% of Southern workforce was of the Southern workforce. But only 40% of Northern workforce were employed in agriculture. Southern opposition killed the Pacific Railway Bill of 1860. President James Buchanan vetoes a Homestead Act. February, U.S. Senator Jefferson Davis. Oh, this sounds important. U.S. Senator Jefferson Davis, sounds important, of Mississippi presents a resolution stating Southern position on slavery, including the adoption of a federal slave code for territories. February 27th, Abraham Lincoln gives his Cooper Union speech against the spread of slavery. The Knights of the Golden Circle reach a maximum popularity and plan to invade Mexico to expand slave territory. April 23rd to May 3rd, the Democrat Party convention begins in Charleston, South Carolina. Southern radicals are fire eaters. That is a weird ass name. That is weird of a name. Fire eaters. Opposed to frontrunner Stephen A. Douglas, bid for party presidential nominee. The Democrats begin to split North and South as many Southern delegates walk out. Douglas cannot secure the 2/3 of the vote needed for the nomination. After 57 ballots, the convention adjourns to meet in Baltimore 6 weeks later. May 9th, former Whigs from the border states form the Constitutional Union Party. And nominate former Senator John C. Bell of Tennessee for president and Edward Eller of Massachusetts for vice president on a one-issue platform of national unity. Let's skip ahead. On May 18th, Lincoln wins the Republican nominee for president. The Republicans adopt a nominate a precise and moderately worded platform includes the exclusion of slavery from the territories, but the affirmation of the right of slaves to order and control their own domestic institutions. So let's skip ahead to November 6th. November 6th, Abraham Lincoln wins the 1860 presidential election on a platform that includes prohibition of slavery in the new states and territories. Lincoln wins all the electoral votes in all the free states except New Jersey. where he wins 4 votes and Stephen Douglas wins 3. The official court of electoral votes occurs February 13th, 1861. November 7th, Charleston, South Carolina authorities arrest a federal officer who have attempted to move supplies to Fort Mortar from Charleston Arsenal. 2 days later, the Palmetto flag in South Carolina is raised over the Charleston Harbor batteries. November 9th, a false report that U.S. Senator Robert Thomas of Georgia resigned reached Columbia, South Carolina. November 10th, South Carolina legislature called for election on December 6th for delegates who moved to a convention for December 17th to consider whether the state should secede from the Union. U.S. Senators James Chestnut Jr. and James Henry Helmut of South Carolina resigned from the U.S. Senate. Let's skip ahead to see where where does it say South Carolina secedes? I'm trying to find the where it says South Carolina secedes right here. Yeah, but then eventually South Carolina secedes. November 14th, Congressman Alexander H. Stevens of Georgia, later Vice President of the Confederate States of America, speaks to the Georgia legislature in opposition to seceding. So, if we take a look, I think we have to go to February 1860. It's February. It's gotta be February. Give me a second. I'm just reading this right now. Sorry. Alright. Okay. 1861, March 1st. The Confederate States take over with the military at Charleston. In South Carolina, Confederate President Davis appoints P.G.T. Beauregard as Brigadier General, who assigns him to command Confederate forces in the area. Beauregard assumed command of Confederate troops at Charleston on March 3rd. Major Anderson warns Washington authorities that a little time remains to make a decision whether to evacuate or reinforce Fort Sumter. Local authorities had been allowing the fort to receive some provisions, but the Confederates were training and constructing works around the Charleston Harbor. So, in summary, by the time of April 12th, April 12th to 13th, 1861, the Civil War would kick off with the bombing of Fort Sumter. That was a little backstory of what happens with the war. Well, around the time, let's skip ahead to 1862. September 17th, 1862. What changes? The plans that Robert E. Lee dropped. Not Robert E. Lee. One of Robert E. Lee's soldiers, a Confederate soldier to be specific, dropped plans, which revealed plans to Union soldiers, to Union troops, to be especially, leading the surprise invasion of the North to be a failure. If these plans were not dropped, the surprise invasion of the North wouldn't be a surprise. No duh. And Robert E. Lee would invade from the south all the way up to Philadelphia, capturing Philadelphia and encircling Washington, D.C., and another group would encircle Washington, D.C., pressuring the Union into a surrender, leading to the end of the Civil War, as we possibly know it. And with that just cause of its ending, we would lead to a new era of the South. The United States would see a lot of tension. I would, around March 3rd, 1863, And also, by the way, the Emancipation Proclamation is also not issued in this timeline. That's a thing. That happens. The Emancipation Proclamation does not get issued. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. The Emancipation Proclamation states all men who are enslaved in rebel states are free. Rebel states only are free. That's what the Emancipation Proclamation stated, and that's what it does state. But in this timeline, it doesn't happen because you know what I just explained. Since Lee's army was able to push up to Philadelphia and capture it to pressure the Union into a surrender, even Britain and France pressured the Union to surrender, because Britain and France were starting to get a little tipsy and a little pissy. Britain especially. Britain diplomats were also seen on a Confederate ship in the Union season. But the British would send in a force, a group of ironclads and ships to blockade the United States. And the United States blockade. A blockade. Huh. And it works. It works very well. This would also pressure in the Treaty of Louisville, where the treaty states the United States must recognize the independence of the Confederate States of America, and the United States must give up southern territories, such as some territories, and give up territories like West Virginia, Kentucky, and even some territories over in the west, near California, but below New Mexico and Arizona. At least the southern parts of what would be modern-day New Mexico and southern modern-day Arizona. With that brings a lot to Confederacy. That brings a lot of territory to Confederacy. And even the Indian Territory, aka nowadays, in modern day, known as Oklahoma, is ceded to the Confederacy. But West Virginia and Oklahoma, or the Indian Territory, have joint occupation from the Confederacy and the United States. Eventually, around 1864, or the joint occupation of Western Virginia would be relieved and be fully occupied by the Confederacy and rejoined back into Virginia herself. But the joint occupation of the Indian Territory will last until, at least, it says of the treaty, it says the Treaty of Louisville. So within the treaty, it states the joint occupation of the Indian Territory will last until 1882. Due to these reasons, to protect Native American rights within the region from Southern or Northern aggression. Well, the Southerners didn't want any aggression towards the Indians, but the treaty specifically states that will last until 1862 to consolidate the Indian Territory into the Confederacy, which by that time the Indian Territory would be renamed Sequoia, which was the real name, which was what the Native Americans wanted to call it. They called it Sequoia. So the Confederates would call it Sequoia. The United States will call it either Oklahoma or the Indian Territory, since they both joined the Confederates respected Indian claims and Indian rights. They did. So, and also around this time, California and what would be now known as the Holy Republic of Deseret would begin trying to get out of the Union. And eventually this does happen. California and the Holy Republic of Deseret would leave the Union, leading the Union to be more divided than ever before. The Republican Party would plummet, many new parties would rise. The Northern Democrats would eventually win the next election in 1864. Lincoln would be shunned for life. He would be shunned for the majority of his life and disrespected in this timeline, and it would not go well. It would not. Lincoln would not have a great time, eventually dying around age 87, then in his home, peacefully in his sleep. He would eventually die peacefully in his sleep by this day. And it would be an interesting time period for the North. This whole thing would be very interesting for them. But Britain, the United States, and the French all recognize Confederate independence. The rest of the world begins to do so. But not to mention, around 1860... hold up. French invasion of Mexico. If we're looking around this, as the Civil War was going on, 1861 to 18... During the Civil War, there was a French invasion into Mexico, or no, the second French intervention into Mexico, the second Franco-Mexican War. In our timeline, the United States supported Mexico and sent them money and sent them all of this. But this would be tense. It would be tense. Because it would be much different. More like it. Yeah, it's more like it. Because this will last not as long. It will end in 1867, but it will end on February. It will end in February 2nd, 1867. Why is it changed? Because the United States isn't here to help. Well, it is, but it can't help. The United States still exists, but it can't help them. Because they don't have the resources or anything like that. Because they're completely worn down, and it can't really send it. The Confederate States of America support the French because they see this as an opportunity to realize their goals. But this wasn't a real plan by the Confederates. The Knights of the Golden Circle wanted this, but the Confederacy didn't give 1-2 shits. All they cared about was that their independence was secure. Their rights of slavery, the property of black Americans, or what they called... I probably can't say it. I actually can't say it. You have to look up what they called them. I'm not saying it because I literally can't. Because if I did, I'm getting censored. I'm so getting censored. But in this case, of black Americans still being slaves, this would be a massive, I mean massive, change in history. Mexico would lose the war against France, and the Yucatan would become independent and become a part of become a French puppet, and so too would Mexico, and that's all I have. And that's really all I have for chapter 1. Chapter 2 would be about the institution of slavery, and we're about to get into it. I appreciate this was a lot of work for me right now. I appreciate it. You're welcome. I hope you enjoy chapter 2. The institution of slavery. What is it? The institution of slavery is basically what the South had. And even now, the South still has after the Civil War. So we're going to talk about their problems and what goes on. But first, we got to address the North before we can do anything else. Since we have to address the North of slavery, yes, this is kind of the case. Since the Emancipation Proclamation was not declared, the 13th Amendment in the North still gets ratified. And this 13th Amendment is still the same. It's basically the same. The 13th Amendment states that all slaves within the North all states within the North. I'm just outlining where slaves were mostly used within the North. I could probably just do this. So, slaves, like I said, outlawed in the North. Why? To get back the South. And mainly because the policy of slavery, the North was against it, the South wasn't, because the South wanted to flourish their economy, because it's what made their economy run. So I'm going to show you areas where the North mainly had slavery. The North really mainly had slavery, like Maryland, of all places, had slavery. We more like inward over here, more inward to the country, but did have some regions on the coast, helping other people with their ports and everything, and helping people package their stuff. In more industrialized areas, like the Steel Belt, I think that's what it's called. Nowadays, it's called the Rust Belt. I think this is what it's called. They had them more on the ports and everything, and within the North, and to help out with luggage, all of that stuff. The North, yes, it is true. The North did have slaves. This is a fact. It's a well-known fact. And the fact that we don't address this enough is something. But anyway, I gotta continue what I was saying. So as I was saying, is that hold up. Yep, okay. What I'm saying is that the North had slaves. These slaves were more in factories, more in industrial places, work, etc. You get the whole mumbo jumbo. You do. They were just in more places like that. And it would be more, I wouldn't say it would be as cruel or as bad as the things done. I wouldn't say all that. So if I can real quick bring up a screen to read off here. I just need to read something real quick. You may see that my little paint.net screen's kind of frozen. Oh, that doesn't show. That's cool. Anyway, I just need to check on something. I'm just researching this real quick. Make sure. I'm mainly just, the reason why I'm taking up a good bit of time, I'm mainly just trying to extend the time because I have expected time. Yeah. Right here. The website I'm using to tell this is American Battlefield Trust. I think I can change my screen. Well, let me see if I can change my screen. I don't know how to change the screen, but I'll tell you. I'll read it off right here. I wanted to share it, but I'll read it right here. A second. But there was slavery in the North, and they would be mainly used in factories and etc. Just like they expect. But they were more closely quartered to the South. Like, let me just outline. More around these states that I'm about to fill in.
think we could change that to color, the color of that to red. Let's do more of this. Let's do that, yeah. Slavery was more located in these areas. Now in the South, we're going to talk about the South. Yeah, I think I have enough time to talk about the South. I think I just activated G-Force, my bad. If we're gonna talk about the South, we're just gonna do that real quick. I major shortened some of the parts, chapter 2, just because I need to get episode 1 done. I'm sorry. A little rush. So slavery was more located. I'm gonna outline states that were formerly a part of the North within this timeline. I'm gonna let y'all know. I was trying to make this episode more of an introduction to this story. If it wasn't as big as an introduction as you thought it would be, I'm sorry. I deeply apologize. Next episode will be even a bigger introduction to it. Okay, I promise. Because I'm planning on using CapCut for the episode. Sorry if I made a little bit of noise. My body doing stuff, but this, I think we're gonna change it to a more color like that. Yeah, that looks good. Then to show the states that have slavery in the South, but then states that do. I'm gonna show states that have a decent amount of slavery. Outline that. But the cruelty of slavery does not end in this timeline, and it's sad. That is really sad. I think I have a photo. I will show up on the screen, like about now, and the photo showcases, well, close to now, but I think after I get done doing what I'm doing right here, it shows what slavery has done. That's basically all it does. It just shows what slavery really is. It's a cruel and evil institution. And shows the cruelty of slavery. Y'all get that, and then so this highlight, like pinkish, is more where slavery is located in the North. This purple right here is more slavery in states, so former northern states. And this is slavery, and I should probably highlight these two purple, right? I should probably have done this. Because these were two former northern states.
Faithful to our trust, like friends and like brothers, we were kind and we were just. But now another in treachery attempts our rights to mar. We'll hoist and hide a bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah, hurrah, for southern rights, hurrah. Hurrah, for the bonny blue flag that bears a single star. Hurrah,
do that real quick. Yep. In former northern states. And look up. It was like 1 in the morning. I'm sorry. I deeply apologize if I'm kind of slow talking and my mic quality's a little off. I don't have my other microphone. I'm using my headphones. If I apologize, I record these at separate times. I should have recorded it all at once, but I don't really have an idea with the institution of slavery. But this is what I have right here, and I just the hot pink, as you can see, which is outside of the border of the Confederacy, is more slavery in those states. You get what I mean? Slavery that was in the North. Was. Because now 13th Amendment. And the purple, not the purple. More like a violet, this little purple color. That is more slavery as slavery within former northern states and that were captured by the Confederacy. What I just highlighted, the purple or purple magenta, whatever it is, the bluish purple maybe, spirit purple maybe. I'll say that. I don't know. More magenta, I guess. Yes, I don't know. Is more of state, is more of like decently sized slavery, big, like is slavery, yeah. But now we get down to here. This is where the institution of slavery gets to a high degree. This is where the harshest punishments are found. This is where the most evil plantations are found. Have y'all ever seen Django? If you've seen Django, you would know, or 12 Years a Slave. 12 Years a Slave. If you've seen those two movies, or especially if y'all have seen the movie Emancipation, the one with Will Smith. The movie, those films show what slavery is. Like runaway slaves, they would get branded with an R and sell back on auction, and they'll be less cheaper. They'll be like much cheaper. Or I think it's either much more cheaper or more expensive. I'm sorry. Does that thing? I'm just looking up.
Keep your Confederate money, even if it's made of tin. Keep all them crinolines, honey, the South shall rise again. No, Susanna, oh, don't you sit and spin. If we all turn out with a rebel shout, the South shall rise again.
Hold up, I'm looking right now.
Haul out that picture of Stonewall, tack it up with an old gray pin. Raise up them stars and bars, the South shall rise again. No, Susanna, oh, don't you sit and spin. If we all turn out with a rebel shout, the South shall rise again.
Yeah. They would have the price of runaway slaves. The runaway slaves would be more cheaper. And here's the thing, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, I mentioned this last chapter, and talking about some context, how long I recorded, for a decent bit. I've already mentioned that runaway slaves will be more cheaper, and with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 happening, when that was enacted, so Southerners can just go up and grab slaves. Sometimes grab runaway slaves in the North, but sometimes they would just grab a random black person that fit the description, and that was terrible. And I think I'm going past the time on this. I'm sorry about my quality. I'm sorry about this being late. I was meant to release it today on the 12th. Well, now yesterday, but I'm gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna do all that. I deeply apologize, but I hope y'all have a great night or morning, whatever. Hope y'all have a good one. And this is the end of episode 1. I tried my best for a first episode, or for some lights. I've never done this before, so first time. And I will get better with time, I promise. But this is the first time doing this, but I will get better with time. I love y'all. Have a great whatever day or night. Have a great day or night. Have a good one. God bless. I will see y'all next time. I hope everything goes up great for y'all. And that is it for episode 1 of Dixie.